Good morning, everyone. It is a cloudy Saturday morning, May 1st. Welcome to the 2021 Leadership Summit. I am very excited to have plenty of great speakers, which would include our keynote speaker, which would be Patricia Marseille. Tamer, if you can take it away to introduce her, I would greatly appreciate it.
Good morning, Monmouth Regional Chamber of Commerce members and guests. Thank you for coming to our Leadership Summit. We are so excited to have this event back and here virtually. Before we go ahead and get started, I just want to shout out Catherine Dwyer from the Young Professionals Group for putting this event together. She has done an amazing job bringing this event back to life after a 3-year hiatus. Catherine, great job. We're looking forward to a great morning. So it is my honor today to present to you our keynote speaker. I met our keynote speaker a few weeks back at another virtual networking event. The past 14 months have been very strange, very crazy, but I think as a chamber, we have done a terrific job adapting to it in the virtual world. And for those that have been growing their business, virtual networking has been really key to you growing your business. And that's where I met our keynote speaker, Patricia. I met her at something called Drop the Mic. You'll be hearing more about that in the coming weeks with Therese and I, as we're going to talk to you about a future member benefit that is coming out. But I saw her. She was a speaker for that day, and she was absolutely fantastic. She is from the Walt Disney Company. So me, as a huge Star Wars nerd, happy May the 4th early to all of you. I was very excited to see if she would be willing to come and be a keynote speaker for this Leadership Summit. And what I heard at that Drop the Mic for the 15 minutes she spoke just really blew me away. She is an incredible leader. We are so lucky and we are so honored to have the Director of Trade Management from the Walt Disney Company to speak to all of you today. Patricia, thank you so much for coming today. The floor is yours.
Tamer, thank you so very much for having me today. Everything about really being a conscious leader and stepping into that space has been really an adventure. But first, I want to start off by saying, Tamer, thank you so very much for inviting me into this forum. It is truly a pleasure to be here and an honor to be here. Everything about the person that you are and the way in which you connect with people was evident. So that was definitely a part of my yes. So I appreciate you for the way in which you show up in the world. Catherine, the way in which you have reached out and connected, another beautiful form of leadership, just the way in which you actually see, connect. You let me be seen, heard, and understood in the ways in which you ensured that I was here, connected, understood the timing, understood exactly who's in this forum, and fully how to engage. So I appreciate you. Just wanted to honor those who brought me into this space. So thank you. So everyone, I am Patricia Marseille. My journey in conscious leadership has been pretty much a lifelong journey, but I'll say intentionally, it's been about a decade and a half. I am currently the supply chain trade management director over at the Walt Disney Company. Now, what does that mean exactly? It means that I help the company facilitate trade when it comes to import-export compliance, and I may get involved in saving a few million here and there for companies every time I get engaged. So that's usually when it comes to duty management and really trying to manage costs, take costs down within a company. That is where I tend to step in and really engage in that space. So I see that leave that meeting and join this one. So I see that when it comes to really everything about import-export compliance, it is really just helping manage trade in that space. So for all the companies that I've worked in, I have come from a journey of starting in microelectronics, optoelectronics area, and moved from that space into the defense industry. So it was really in looking at the biological warfare detection equipment. That was the space that I was in. Moved from that to oil and gas.
You sent me an email.
From that into
Question, did you have
the
any
Disney
childcare?
space of retail. Now, if you are like me, I'm sure you were wondering, how in the world did I move from technology to retail? That is the extraordinary journey. So I will start in really beautiful space of consciousness in speaking to how Disney actually pulled me in. So I stepped into that space really because the technology background that I have gave me exposure to a lot of areas of compliance, a lot of areas of trade, a lot of details when it comes to trade. And that was very helpful inside of Disney with all the dynamics of the company. So that's how I came into Disney in regards to retail from where I started. But let's talk about conscious leadership. What is it? Conscious leadership is actually leading with intention, leaning into intentionally evolving your awareness. Space you are in, whether decision making, collaboration, or agreements, which are the 5 elements of leadership, that whichever of those elements that you are in, that you are fully connected. And because you are connected, you are causing leadership, not just for others, but for yourself. That it is an equal exchange constantly happening back and forth. Now, why is that important and why now? Well, you've seen the state of our world. I want you to take a little journey with me. Picture the time in which everything about our nation, everything about the ways in which we engage with one another was fairly peaceful. That it was a time in which when we talked to one another, it was actually seeing your neighbor. It was actually speaking and connecting. If you walked into the grocery store, just the cashier was standing and taking your money and helping you get your groceries. You actually you saw the face. If you saw them again, beside the time that they were your cashier, you would recognize them. Think about the times in which you'd come up and down the stairs and you may run into someone and they smile at you. Think about now where we're all in mask, and when we're seeing each other, even walk space, that we're not actually fully connecting anymore. People's eyes are dim, people's eyes are up, people's eyes are to the side. It's full avoidance. And if there is connection, it's more of these eyes versus these eyes, which is still burying a smile. And consciousness and conscious leadership is knowing that you lead at any point in time. It's not about having a position or a title or a role. It is actually about the person that you are, rising up that and being able to lead in that way. So that when you're stepping into any area, even when it comes to problem solving, just recently I posted on LinkedIn, I posted a statement that I always say, and a friend of mine encouraged me to actually put it out there. And it's the whole thought of being a conscious leader is not being a problem solver. It's the very last thing that a conscious leader does. Because walking into a room, seeing a crack in the wall, where other leaders would say, how do we fix the crack? How did the crack even get there? Maybe if we can figure out the source, then we can fix the crack. Necessary? Because if the wall needs to last another 50 years, trust me, fixing the crack isn't going to do it. If the wall is no longer necessary and it has served its term, let's knock it down and open the space and do something new. But the real question to drive the long-term solution, do we need a wall? So it's actually something that I use all the time when I am leading teams, when I am connecting with my cast within Disney. It's, do we need the wall? Are we looking too much at the small little problem driving a long-term solution? And that is conscious leadership. It's waking up to the fact of what is truly the solution versus do I need to pay attention to the minutia of the problem? Problems are a much bigger sign if we're willing to look into them. They hold a truth that is deeper, it's wider, it's greater, and it has an impact on us as well as the world in which we serve or reside in. So I will stop there in regards to what is conscious leadership and stepping into why it's important, a little bit as to why it's important, because I displayed how it is that we're showing up in the world today, right? With the mask, connect versus how we used to connect, and the ways in which we see each other versus how we used to see each other. That communication is changing, but how do we adapt? And how do we adapt in a way that allows us to honor the human inside, the soul inside, to connect and still be safe? It really is in that effort of a smile that you can still see, although my mouth is covered, versus walking in the streets this way. Or coming up on screen and realizing I really don't want to be on screen today, but I'm here. And so I'll be a part of this meeting. Versus looking at the people on the other side and knowing that you are connecting with another human. And that in and of itself, that energy, that space, it's sufficient enough for your presence, for your full presence. And so that's what conscious leadership is about. It's being intentional about every space that you're in, knowing that that has a reverberated effect, a power, and an impact with every single person you connect with. But I know we were going to open the floor to some questions. I actually want to go ahead, Hammer, whoever's going to lead that.
Patricia, thank you so much for giving that keynote address today. I'm going to pass it off to Catherine, but before I do that, two things. One question from me. Can we please get more Emperor Palpatine merchandise? I know you probably know the right people. I would love to see more of that. And Mike, I do have a question.
I have nothing to
pass it to Catherine, who will lead the question and answer. But you've clearly demonstrated fantastic leadership. And over this past year, I'm sure you've had to evolve in how you've led your team. Can you please tell the group one of the challenges that you've had to overcome during this past 14-month pandemic and what you did to overcome it during the pandemic? And then Catherine, it's on to you.
Great question. Great question. So first, I should also state disclaimer that I am speaking on behalf of Patricia Marseille. I am not speaking on behalf of the Walt Disney Company. So this is not a Walt Disney talk. This is a Patricia Marseille. So I just want to be super clear on that. The steps that I have taken within the company, it actually has been with my team. I think one of the biggest mishaps of the transition early on is that everyone was looking to problem solve. And so everyone was looking at, okay, we're home now. How do we make this work? How do we still do what we need to do? How do we make sure blah, 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 blah. I was looking at, this is not temporary. This is going to cause something new. And because it's going to cause something new, let's reset some of the things we're doing. I want to know what are all the areas that are causing friction. So I took all the 5 pillars of leadership, the communication, decision-making, engagement, agreement, collaboration, took all 5, took my team together. We talked about all 5 and said, where are your friction points in each one of these things? So for communication, the way it would look like is right now, the way that we used to communicate prior to the pandemic, you could send a quick email and someone would respond based off what it is that you have in the header, and it was okay. But now with the pandemic, this is how everyone's communicating, so that's not helpful. If you really want to be able to contact me, let's go ahead and identify some rules of engagement. Let's identify what is going to be urgent and how we're going to communicate urgency. Is it going to be an instant message? Is it going to be a phone call? Is it going to be a text? If it's going to be an email, what should be in the header? that you know for sure this is something that you need to respond to within the next 24 hours. If not, then I have 48, or I have 72, or I have an entire week, right? So it was really just setting those parameters of what is that response rate going to be. The other form of checking in or removing friction was when it comes to the outreaches. Some of our partners, they were very used to us walking around the building, going ahead and stopping by, asking questions. So now it was making phone calls. Well, what are you doing in regards to the mental health of your partners when it comes to that? Is that really helpful, knowing that they are now at home, they have family dynamics, there are other things at play. So maybe making the phone call, having these constant conversations, doing the constant instant messaging actually isn't helpful. Find out from your partners what actually is the best form of engagement when it comes to that communication, and then check in on that. So it was really things in that matter. Collaboration. We look at collaboration, or I shouldn't say, I look at collaboration as more of Skillshare versus just here's an element of work that I need for you to do. How do we work together with you doing this part? I look at it as Skillshare. You have a very specific talent and a skill that we need. How do we gain some insight and some knowledge on what it is that you're doing and some of what it is that we do, while we get you to go ahead and plug this hole for us, but we also gain some insight on how to plug it for ourselves later on if such an issue was to arise again. So those are the elements of how I define collaboration. And as a result, we looked at what are some of the frictions within our collaboration spaces. How is it that we're connecting? Because everyone was used to meeting in the lounge or going to so-and-so's office. And now it was, well, how do we all get in a huddle? What does that look like in Zoom? How do we not waste time with this Zoom space? And it was really well, just set some parameters around it. What are the key things that are driving the friction? There's a lot of chit chat. There's a lot of, oh, who's this? Oh, cut it down. Make sure that when it comes to the first 5 minutes, you guys say the first 5 minutes is going to be about building rapport. Boom. Everyone's going to go around and say who they are, what's going on, what's the list, whatever your collaborative efforts are. If there are some key elements that you're highlighting, those key things. So it was really more about honing in on the things that were causing us pain and making sure those things were removed, and then coming back to driving solutions as usual. So I know it was a long, but hopefully I addressed that.
No, that was a beautiful answer. I believe Sherilyn has a question. If Sherilyn, you want to ask your question.
First of all, that was
Awesome.
fantastic. My first question was if you could recap those 5. Maybe somebody can put it in the chat. That would be great. I love how you brought up the smile behind the mask and even how engaged you are. It just shows how engaged you are. But my question is you came out of technology and here you went into the retail. At what point do you think that you really zoomed in on how important leadership was? What was it in your younger days? Did you feel like you were trained in it, or do you feel like it was more of a natural attraction?
Great question. So I'll start with the latter first. That my journey and how I began was actually because I had poor leadership. And I was dealing with, so let me start with the fact that I was in trade compliance. I started in this field as an intern in college. So I was a student through and through. And from that space became went into the field of trade compliance or trade management. And when I was an intern, I had some really great leaders in that space. But when I transitioned into the corporate space and became a student of that space, my leaders weren't so great. Especially when it came to women. At the time, women were feeling very there was a lot of tension and more of threat in seeing another woman in the same space because it was male dominated. It still is very much male dominated. And so because of that, women, instead of locking arms, were more of button heads. And I didn't understand that because my time in college, I mean, women, we were, like rah rah, like everyone together, supporting each other, putting each other on each other's shoulders. So being in that space, it was an oddity to me. And seeing it, feeling it, especially from multiple women who were in higher positions that I was admiring at the time, and getting that type of response from them turned me off. It turned me when I connected with men who were in that space. They were all about mentorship, get in there, get it done, all about growing in that space. That for me was my aha moment. And that was the beginning of, if one is not awakened to their own self mastery and understanding themselves, then you can easily fall into the space of this is mine and only mine versus this is ours and we are so much better together. So it was leaning in that space, mentored by the opposite, that really drew me to, I want to make sure everyone receives this. Everyone gets this kind of attention, this type of growth. And I love the fact that it also caused me to pay attention to leaning into my own self-mastery, my own fears, because the only reason why these women were behaving this way was because they were dealing with either fear of rejection or fear of failure. And it was me being a newbie and looking at that and going, oh my gosh, you have all these skills. Is it that you're going to overpower my space? Meanwhile, I'm going, I think you're fabulous and I just want to mimic what you're doing. Right. So it was really, that was the charger for me, or the starter for me. The 5 elements of leadership we have. Yeah, absolutely. Did you need me to clarify anything else on that?
No, that was excellent and a great answer. Thank you. And just if you can just recap the 5 really fast, that'd be great.
Yeah, no problem. So the 5 elements of leadership: communication, agreement, collaboration, decision making. Elements or keys of leadership. All leaders will rotate between these 5 things at all times and display them at all times. And it is a matter of rising in mastery in each one of those spaces. So you're constantly revisiting them, constantly refining them, constantly looking at them differently, because it's all on the basis of the spaces that you are in at the time. And that's why consciousness is important, and why leaning with intention is important. Because anything that you have put a system to or a process to that you are defaulting, that history is what's going to drive it. Just know that history only tells its story. It doesn't tell its future. So you have to drive it. You have to be the one to be intentional about it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Jerry, you have a question.
I do. Thank you so much. I'm so inspired by what you had to say. And especially the part about being an empowered woman and coming into a space where we hold each other up on each other's shoulders. Takes a village. Anyway, my question is for the young professionals in the room, I'm wondering if you're in a, not like you're hiring someone, but when you are looking to hire someone, what do you look for in a resume that really resounds with you and maybe piques your interest in pursuing an interview?
That's interesting. I'm more of the interviewing process type of person. Because of the fact that I am more on the who are you, right? I think everything that's on paper is a profile, and it gives you a great profile, but it's a tap into the story versus an actual full view into the story. So when it comes to resumes, I mean, they're it's our recruitment is the one who really handles that, in the details of that and what all of that looks like. It's really just a matter of matching the profile of whatever it is that the role is requiring. I have several different types of roles. So it's really just a matter of what the role is requiring. But when it comes to the interview process, for me, I've had some recent interviews. And with that process, for me, it's about who is this individual that I'm speaking to and how is it that they like to show up in the world? Never mind how they are showing up, but how do they like to show up in the world? And if that is the space, then what exactly is your big why? What's your ultimate why, your big purpose in really living out your days, living out your time, living out this role? And it may be temporary, and that's okay. Just tell me what that temporary looks like. Like, what do you want it to fully embody? Because as a leader myself, because I'm constantly looking to cause leadership in me, I'm looking to cause leadership in others. So for those who are interviewing with me, I want them to understand the space that they're about to step into. My team really isn't the average trade compliance team. It's not, just a team of performers and getting things done. I am constantly leaning on my team like, who are you as a leader? How are you growing? How are you investing in yourself? What ways are you rising in your mastery? And how is it that you are constantly innovating when it comes to the 5 elements of leadership? Like, what are the ways that you are constantly massaging? Especially now that the team has the full rotation of digging into friction and really kind of checking that out, because friction never goes away. As long as you're rising and you're growing, you're stepping into a new space of friction. There's going to be something new there. And it may be outside of you, but usually it has to do with what's going on inside of you. It's really coming to the space of what is it that I'm doing or not doing? How is it that I'm communicating or not communicating? How are we engaging or not? Like, it really has to come to that space, because even the whole of I'll lean into decision making a little bit in regards to that element of leadership. When you're leaning into decision making, most people think, well, yeah, okay, well, decision making, here are the key things that we need to make decisions on. As long as everyone understands that's established, then we're fine. But who needs to make those decisions? And when it comes to really establishing the foundation of that, like being able to say, okay, if it's something urgent, the person who's working on that item, because they understand the importance of this thing, they understand whether or not it's urgent, what's causing it to rise or not, they are the decision maker. For something that is risk averse, that is actually not risk averse, but risk management, then that you rise it up to the top, because now that's affecting the brand. It's affecting the actual company. It's affecting your name, right? So it's being able to actually give people the rules of engagement when it comes to decision making, understanding where and when they can, and who is the one who's actually doing that. It's not enough to say that requires a decision, that requires a decision, and that requires a decision. And it's definitely not enough to say, I'll be the decision maker for all of it. That's ridiculous. So it's really understanding all of the dynamics of that and the play of that. So I just wanted to highlight or bring that into what you're asking, because when it comes to how I'm reviewing someone and sitting across or looking at a resume, like the resume is the beginning, it's the surface element for me. It's kind of like looking at decision making where I'm going, okay, we know the list of things that we need to make decisions on, but actually talking to the person is where I go through the element of, okay, so what are the details of that decision and who needs to make it and why? And when it comes to removing friction from that space, what does that look like?
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
So thank you.
So before
Hopefully
we
I
move
answered your
on-
question.
Before we move on to the next question, we have some question about the 5 elements. I believe we're missing one because there's like a little feedback, of course, every time you go to say it. So I just want to clarify for the crowd so we all got this down pat so we can all learn this important lesson. So we have communication, agreement, collaboration, decision making, and what is the final Jeopardy answer for this last element?
So communication, collaboration, agreement, engagement, decision making.
All right, everyone, we got this all down pat now. I promise.
Was I clear this time?
Yep, we got it. Thank you. Jeremy has a question, but doesn't have the ability to raise his hand.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi just keeps slowing up.
No, you're great. This is great. Jeremy, if you want to go next.
Yeah, Patricia, thanks so much. My question has to do with what you were saying about, the difference in how, men and women would lead, and this being ours, and together we're much better. And in terms of reducing some friction, I know oftentimes multiple teams might be working towards some same end goal. And what's important to me and my team might be vastly different than what's important to other teams. So what can cause friction is when I need something from another team and it's just not a priority for them. So what advice might you have to, I guess, help get everyone back on track, minimize that friction, and make sure that everybody is working together? Because like you said, we are much better when we're working together.
Absolutely. One key and simple question to ask. What does success look like for you?
Oh, that's not a rhetorical.
That's it. It's that one simple question. What was that?
I said, was that a rhetorical question?
No, I'm actually stating that's the question. That is the one question. That's how you fix the problem. Asking that one question, what does success look like for you? It doesn't matter what the project is. Asking that question means that you are now getting that person's insight of the outcome, the overall outcome. And when you want to dig into that, you can end up asking key questions like, okay, that's what success looks like for you. What are some key milestones that you see to getting to that? Now you're getting insight of what their strategy is, how it is that they're thinking of going about it. And then you bring in what your strategy is. And then you start to speak about collaboration. Now you start to speak about a merger of the minds. And you really start to ideate on the solution. But you have to find out how they're defining success. You may be defining success completely differently. They may have one goal and you have another. And it's about seeing how you can either marry it or come to the place of speaking the same language so that you're both going after the same thing.
Beautiful.
Is that helpful?
Very much, yes.
It's helped me so many times in so many things. It's helped me with leaders everywhere because everyone has perception and everyone has a certain. Here's a perfect example. I can say the word cat. And right now, based on 32 people who are part of this conversation, there are 32 different views on me saying the word cat. 32. Some people thinking of a Some people are thinking of lions and tigers. Some people are thinking of a piece of porcelain. Some people are thinking of a pet. Some people are having anxiety and feeling fear. Some people are thinking of allergies. Other people are smiling and happy and thinking soft and cuddly. All I did was say the word cat. I didn't give any other reference point of like nothing. I just said cat. So in the same way that we tend to think that we are talking the same language because we're using the same words, we have to understand that there's a heart and mind and history and experience behind that word and behind those set of words. So it's always gaining clarity on, tell me how you define that. How are you defining it? As soon as you find a point of contention or a point of friction, it means that there's a lack of understanding of terms. That's really all it is. It's a lack of understanding of terms and coming back to the basic principles of that.
Beautiful. Kathleen, you have a question.
Good morning. So you talked a little bit about, like the last year and sort of our world has changed a little bit with people, working at home. As companies come out of COVID, companies are deciding more hybrid versus remote or on-site. I think it's really important as we look to sort of evolve our careers, how we show up when we have the opportunities to show up. So how do you see the differences for people to take opportunity on how they are able to show up and advance their careers if they're going to remain hybrid or remote at that point within companies?
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. My
Sure.
Wi-Fi here.
No
You cut
problem.
out a little bit at the tail end of your question.
So I think it's just important for people's career progression, like when they are given the opportunity, if more people decide to be hybrid, will their careers not advance as much as they have opportunities to show and present themselves, whether it's in meetings, whether it's virtually or in person? What do you recommend for people to be conscious of, making those decisions?
I actually don't think that it will halter at all. So back in 2017, Gartner made a study of the workforce and where the workforce was going. And what they identified back in 2017 was that we were going to move to more of a freelance loaded workforce. So that when it comes to big business, big corporations, that those that they would actually be hiring and managing are freelance workers. So many entrepreneurs who are experts in their field but are saying no to coming inside of a company. So when it comes to what it is that they're doing, they want to own their own fate and really be able to drive solutions and bring in that expertise. So what many companies have had to learn to adopt to is actually what's known as fast teaming. And fast teaming is ultimately it's pretty much like the concept of like now I can't think of the term. It's a military term. It's escaped my mind, but it's bringing teams together really quickly, full of experts to drive home a solution. And those expertise may or may not be inside of your company. And so it's really looking at who can really drive this particular element home in a 6-month project, a 1-year project, whatever that is, getting to the end of that and then being able to move on. Now, could that person be recycled into something else? Possibly. But you're really looking at what are all of the expertise of this individual and how can they drive home this solution? So fast teaming, entrepreneurship, freelance, that's an area that, according to that Gartner study, was it's a key form of where the workforce was. That was prior to even knowing about the pandemic and the fact that it was coming. So I think what the pandemic has done is that it's really just pushed us more into that space instead of resisting it. to really just take it in and allow that space to flourish more and more. I think we're going to see more people owning their fate, really just being able to drive their businesses and their expertise. And with the onset of the pandemic, many companies were giving books, material, training for free. Tons of expertise, like that first year, where it was just all over the internet, which means it's still out there. So a lot of the younger generation, many people who were finding themselves furloughed or employed, that were learning from a lot of those free training sessions, the free material, free books. There are tons of libraries out there that have been made open for people to go ahead and have access to. Universities have opened up a lot of their online books in giving like curriculum level material to the public, and just really trying to help with the onslaught of the pandemic. So I think what we're going to see is more of the workforce just being able to own their fate.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Ryan had a question, but he doesn't have the raise hand button. So Ryan, take it away.
Thank you so much for being here. My question has to do with building a leadership team. If you're building a leadership team, do you necessarily look for people that are already intentional leaders, or is that something that you kind of teach over time? And if you don't have that framework, how do you go about doing that?
Great question. So leadership, there are two things that tend to happen. Two ways in which I have seen people step into leadership. They're either in leadership because they were promoted, and they were promoted because of performance. They're great performers. They are able to get the numbers. They are able to get the process. And all of that is great. But there's the second level where people are elevated into leadership because they are actually leading people. And leading means to actually guide, to be able to see individual strengths, nourish it, have it to truly become an expert material or expert area for that individual, and then allow that to be exposed so that that individual can grow more, be seen, be understood by others, elevating them into a position in which that expertise, that love of theirs, is something that they are able to drive versus you driving it for them. So in the beginning, it is about a leader really being able to help formulate that or flourish that and drive that. And then it's going ahead and placing that person on the leap pad that they can go ahead and, hop from there. Do I have a framework? I do. I have certain elements. It starts off with the 5 pillars that I spoke about, and really just being able to drive those elements with my team and having them see that. But leadership is also about accountability, having integrous confrontation, being able to speak the truth to individuals and do it integrously. It's not that you are looking to cause harm, but you are looking to cause growth. And growth can be uncomfortable. I mean, no seed grows without busting out of its shell. And I'm sure that is not an easy process for the root that's taking up. So it really is about really understanding those key elements in driving leadership. The 5 pillars: standing in integrous confrontation, being able to have a very clear, trustworthy conversation, and ensuring that you are honoring the individuals that you're connecting with. You want people to feel seen, heard, understood. No one should be in a meeting that you have and they're walking away from that session going, I have no idea why I'm here. How many meetings have you guys gone to where it's like you get an invite, they put you on the list, you're a part of that session, and you're like, I don't even know why I'm here. Like, why did I get invited into this session? So it's really gaining some clarity on that, being able to send out a meeting notice with an agenda so that people are clear as to why you need them, or if they need to delegate someone else, that they're able to delegate someone else because you're clear in your meeting invite. That when you are engaging with another team and they are giving you a project or something that they need for you to do, clarify, verify. It's the easiest thing we can do, clarify, verify, but it's the last thing that we tend to do because we just go, I'm excited about this project. I'm glad you gave it to me. I'm off and running. And you could be off and running on the wrong thing. So just clarify, verify before you go. And the last thing is really just taking a review of your key processes and your procedures. So as I was speaking about before in looking at friction, it's ultimately, as Tony Robbins says, is doing the value chain review. The area in which you have the most value in your business or in your department or organization, where you have the biggest impacts, that you're constantly looking at the chain of flow when it comes to that, to ensure that you're removing friction from it, that if any chain is broken within it, that you're able to mend it. If something's old, you're removing it. If something needs to be evolved to something new, that you're able to do that as well.
Great. And with our last question, I will pass the floor off to Bonnie Preston.
Tricia, hi, you have my head spinning. This has been awesome. I think you may have covered it, but I just want a little bit more clarity on when in the leadership role and your team, there's an issue sometimes with a team member's identity versus their role. And to try and get that separated and get them back into that role portion and get them to be able to separate the two. Do you have some guidance on that?
Absolutely. It's really just a matter of doing documented roles and responsibilities, identifying specifically what is this role, and knowing what this role is and what the impact of this role is what is this role. Then you identify what are the responsibilities of the role. So these are daily, weekly, quarterly, annual key things that this role needs to get accomplished. So once you've identified those two key aspects, then you can have a conversation on personal self-mastery. Then it's like, okay, now what is it that you want? What is it that you're looking for? And how do you want to show up in this space?
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, this was very informative, enlightening, and powerful. I think everyone should give a round of applause to our speaker, Patricia Marseille.
Thank you all, Catherine, Tamer. Thank you again. Thank you everyone here for being so gracious. I was going to prepare a full keynote statement, but then I spoke to Catherine and I was talking about the fact that I'm not really familiar with this group and how you guys flow. And so I felt that the questions would probably be better. So I'm glad that we did go that route because now your voices were heard and what it is that you wanted to get out of this was accomplished. So thank you for graciously having me here, and I appreciate every single one of you. Have a great event.